back, Deer Corner. Welcome to the channel. Getting hot quick. Getting hot quick these days. About 11 o'clock, it got about 80 degrees, between 80 and 85. Time to get out of the woods. Been in the woods this morning, trying to catch up on my trimming. And keeping your things trimmed up is critical. A lot of deer hunters wait. They wait till like 3 weeks before deer season. Make sure their corridors are open, or their shooting lanes are open, or even the way deer travel are open. But you got to keep them trimmed up all year long, just not right before deer season. The way these storms been coming through, and these not only tree limbs, whole trees falling over. And I had to cut a couple trees out of the way already. I mean whole trees this time of year. So you picture a deer using a corridor or their paths from one place to another. And this time of year, if a tree falls across it and blocks it, and you don't get out there and get it out of the way right away, that deer has already figured out the least resistance, because deer are lazy. They're going to figure a way around that. And it may not be a way that you're hunting or a way that you want them to go around or come through. So a lot of them will wait right before season and go, oops, time to get the chainsaw out, let's cut it. Well, the thing about it, there's no guarantee that that deer will go back to his old route. He already, or she already, found the least resistance around that structure. So they may right away find it, or in a couple of weeks find it, or they may never go back through that direction again. So it is key to keep these elements out of the way, keep things open, so that the deer keep traveling the same routine over and over for you to hunt. But like I say, it got hot, and I'm pulled into the shop here, cleared out an area that I can get in here. And for some of you watched a previous video about my log splitter, and that's what I'm going to start working on now. And it's funny, I found this self-propelled mower, cost me nothing. He gave it to me. The front drive is bad. To fix the front drive was the price of the whole motor. So I got the motor for nothing. Now, this is 159cc, which is 4.7 horsepower. I'd like to have a 5 horsepower or better. But this is a 4.7 horsepower, 159cc. And I know the log splitter, the pump, has to run between 3,000 to 3,500 RPM. Now that's for splitting hard wood, your oaks, hickories. I need to get that RPM up to split that hard wood. Now this motor at idle will idle at 2,200 RPM at 11 foot-pounds. So this motor here has what they call a 2 or 3 stage governor. It doesn't have a throttle. So the harder it works, the faster the motor revs up. And this motor revs up to around 3,600 RPM, which is more than what I need. So that factor, as far as the motor goes, as far as RPM goes, run the pump. The second factor is, I know the pump has a 3.5-inch pulley on it. I do not know what size pulley, since it's a front wheel drive, is on this motor. And I'm hoping it's a 3.5 or bigger. So it'd be equivalent to what I need. If it's smaller, I'm going to have to change the pulley on it. so I keep the torque up. The bigger the pulley, the more torque. And several things I'm going to have to change on it right now. I'm going to have to fix the rope to where my pull starts down here, not up there. Second thing I'm going to have to look at and fix and change, this has a brake on the flywheel. So when you let go of the brake off the handle, it kills the motor. So I want the motor to be live while I'm splitting wood at all times. So I'm going to have to bolt this open, 100% leave it open. So I'm going to go ahead and get all that done, take the motor off, then I'll take the motor off the other one and start matching up to see what I have to do to fix it. So it's going to take a day or two, but we're going to get her back together and get her back running. So this is my project during the hot days. So I'm just going to bring you along. Okay. Looks like I'm going to need a 5/8, take the blade off. And this cover is covering the pulley for the front drive. 3/8, and I'm going to need a 1/2 inch, it looks like, to take the motor off. So you're taking a blade off of a mower like this, always disconnect your spark plug so you don't get an accidental start. Let's see what's behind door number 1. Yeah. Let's see. Got the motor off, got it loose, ready to come up. The other thing about this motor, it didn't come with an air filter or air filter cover, so I'm going to have to go ahead and locate one of them. So far on this log splitter repair, $0 but time. So far it's coming out pretty good. But it's loose, it's up, it can come out. I'm ready to go on, be mounted. The pulley's a 1/2 inch smaller than I'd like it, but we'll have to try it and see. We may have to change gear ratios, a bigger pulley on the pump. So get a bigger pulley on this motor, it's going to be rough to do. I can change the pump motor pulley on the pump easier. So we're going to move on over to the log splitter and take that motor off of it and see what we got under it about a mounting plate for this. I'm pretty sure the mounting plate under that other motor is toast. I don't think it's any good at all. I'm going to have to cut it off, I believe. So I'm just going to bring you along on this project, and like I say, it's hot out there. So we're going to go ahead and get this log splitter back up and running. Take the speed wrench and take this old motor off. It went through some road rage. And go ahead and see how I can mount that motor on here. But this motor here is toast. There's nothing left to it. So let me go ahead and get the speed wrench and let's get it off. See what we got to work with. 3 bolts. Oh boy. Oh boy. This is going to take some work. Split here. All that's busted. I have to figure out what I'm going to be doing with it. It's going to take a little planning. So, to mount that motor on here. Let me go ahead and get started on a little fabrication right here. Going to be some welding. So, get this back together. I can mount that motor. I ended up having to cut the old motor mount off. It was just too far gone, couldn't straighten it. And I tacked on some angle iron, got angle iron tacked on, some scrap angle iron I had laying around. I tacked it on, tacked on an engine plate. I'm going to put the engine on, mark my holes for my bolts to mount it. And everything's tacked on right now. It's not welded up. In case I have to move something, I can go ahead and cut the tacks and move it to make sure my pulleys and everything line up from my engine to my hydraulic pump, that they're in line. The engine is sitting in the right location and far enough away from the cylinder where the heat from the engine won't bother the cylinder. And that just brings me to something else. Just like tacking this together, prepping it before you finish it, weld it up. Make sure everything's in place. That's the same thing with your deer hunting. And what I mean by that, first, you get your location. Then you go to scouting. You scout the area you're going to hunt. Then you look at your wind direction. Now, your wind direction this time of year will be different from the wind direction during hunting season. During the fall and winter months, wind will change, and I'll bring that up in a later on video on how you can walk in the woods and see during your fall and winter months which direction the wind is going, and kind of help you out on that. Your weather, that's another factor, the weather of the area you're going to hunt. And on that one today is pretty easy, because you can take your major cities or towns and you can put a date, November 4th, 2020 weather, and it will come up, and you can go back for years on a certain date, what weather, what wind, how the weather was on that date in that area. So you can go back and check on the weather. And then your deer stand location. So it's just basically you're doing everything just like this. I'm just tacking this up, prepping everything, making sure everything's correct before I weld it up. And that's the same thing with scouting for deer and getting out into a location you're hunting. You're going to do the prep work before you even take the move to put in a stand. And because once you're in there hunting and you make a mistake, you're in that stand for that day, and it could ruin that hunt for that area if you're not prepping correctly. So I just want to bring that along. I'm going to go ahead, set the motor in here, make sure it's all correct. Check my spacing, make sure everything's right. I'm going to mark my holes, drill them for my mount. This engine here, it came off of a push mower, which had the handbrake release. And that's another issue with this motor, is it has no kill switch. That's because when you release the handbrake, the clutch closes on the flywheel and kills the motor. So I got to install a kill switch on it. And throughout the years of running this log splitter, after about 3 hours, the hydraulic fluid would start getting hot. And for some of you to know about hydraulics, once the fluid starts getting hot, you start losing your pressure. So why I got it apart, and I had this thing for years. I never did put it on, never did. But I'm going to now. And it's a hydraulic oil cooler. And it's going to keep the oil cooled down as in operation. So hopefully to keep the oil from getting hot. And I'm going to be putting that on right now while I have the time. And while I got the engine off and everything else, I'll be putting it on. But this project's about coming to an end, and we'll get the engine mounted, get it running, everything checked out on the engine, and we'll go from there. Everything's welded up, painted up, touched up, motor's mounted, changed the oil, spark plug, and checked all the gaps on the coil, the flywheel, made sure the gapping's good. And let's see how it goes. It's got a little popping till I get the breather on it, air filter on it. I could adjust the carburetor to get that out of it. But this project's nearing an end. Hydraulic work, the wheels, and the tow bar on the front of it. This log splitter will be back in action. And I'm kind of surprised what I got into it right now. I got around $80 in it right now. And this splitter we figured was 12 years old. And what we paid for this splitter 12 years ago, you couldn't buy a quarter of a splitter today. I just can't believe how much they cost. It's just unreal. But this one here is ready to go. The motor's in excellent shape. Hydraulics are good. It should last 10 years or more. Taken care of, but don't fly out the back of a pickup truck again. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Go ahead and subscribe. Leave me a comment. But just remember, we're in the woods. Be safe. And this time, make sure you take plenty of water. It's hot out there. And we'll see you next time.